This video is my reasons for why the monarchy should be abolished. I find the monarchy completely irrelevant, completely out of touch with reality of a modern day, and I think it is unnecessary and send a really bad message for democracy. So this is my reasons of why I think they should be got rid of. But one thing I'm going to say is these reasons do not include personal attacks on the royal family as people. While some people want to abolish the monarchy, make it some personal thing about the individual people in the royal family, I'm not going to go down that route because I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Also, I would say that some of the personal attacks that newspapers like the Daily Mail have made on certain people in the royal family is wrong. Even though these people I'd say are celebrities in public life, even they deserve some amount of privacy, and I do not like how media really attacks certain people, makes some people heroes, some people villains and all of that, and that's why I'm not going down that route in this video. This video is purely about the royal family and monarchy as an institution, and what that says about our democracy, and it's for that reason only is why I think they should be abolished. So, reasons for abolishing the royal family. One reason that a lot of people say is they cost a lot of money, but the counter argument to that is they bring in more money than they cost. The problem with that argument is unprovable. How much can you exactly say is brought into the country in money from having a royal family compared with how much they cost? Because you've got many factors to this: how much the economy benefits, how many more people coming in, maybe stupid American tourists that come over to England to stand in front of Buckingham Palace because they're so dumb they don't know any better, and hopefully they spend some money in the country and that basically funds the monarchy. Does it bring in more money than they cost? Is unprovable. So, other reasons why the royal family should be abolished, and that is the amount of utter time wasting. When a new Prime Minister is elected, rather than the Prime Minister just going on and getting on with their job, instead there's a stupid ceremony. It's irritating, it's long, it's unnecessary, and it's just completely stupid. And as well as that, not just as it's time wasting, but it also sets a really bad impression of the country. Because these ceremonies are out of touch with reality, out of touch with normal people. But beyond that, it's a symbolisation of a dictatorship. Even though this country is obviously not a dictatorship, why do the ceremonies imply a dictatorship? In effect, if you look at it exactly what it is, an individual ruler rules a country. That is a dictatorship. So we're celebrating something that a country is not. So why would we do that? Surely we should celebrate the democracy, not that we've got this unnecessary royal family that appoints the Prime Minister. Even though they don't appoint the Prime Minister, obviously the general public does, but we still symbolise it like the royal family appoints the Prime Minister. Seems absolutely stupid to me. The other thing is the ridiculous messaging, having a royal family the head of state. The Queen, or now King, is in charge of the country and they've delegated all their powers to the Prime Minister. That is completely untrue, it's entirely ceremonial, so why even have this? The other thing that gets on my nerves is that things are named after the royal family, as if the royal family's in charge, even though they're not, such as HM Revenue and Customs. Why does Her Majesty or His Majesty have to have that in the name of something as to do with taxes, not even to do with the stupid monarchy? So why is everything named after them? It makes the country look so stupid. Now, to be honest, I didn't really care that much for a royal family. I thought I should be abolished because they're a waste of time, but I didn't really have that strong opinion on it. Only now do I have a very strong opinion. So what's made my opinion so much stronger? And that's because it's now personally affected me. Before, it was like, so what, I don't care. But now, it's got in the way of my everyday life and that's pissed me off. Because what happened was, after the Queen died, it was all thrust in my face and I'd rather talk about something else, but everywhere around me was all about it. Now, let's be honest, the Queen is a non-political figure, because obviously we live in a democracy, and the Queen's not elected, so therefore the Queen is not allowed an opinion. But ultimately the Queen gave up on having her own opinions to be the head of state, well, the ceremonial head of state. So the Queen is not allowed a political opinion, because she's not elected. So in other words, the Queen is an irrelevant person. She has no relevance. All she's about is for ceremony, and the ceremony's only there because it attracts American tourists to spend money. Now, when the Queen died, this should not have been newsworthy, because it was just an irrelevant news story. The Queen died of old age. She's very old, and there was nothing untoward about her death. She died completely of natural causes. There was nothing suspicious about it. She wasn't murdered, for example. So a person who was pretty much irrelevant died of old age of completely natural causes. That's not a news story. That should not have been made a news story. Maybe some tiny little bit at the end of the news, just mentioning it very briefly. But let's just take a look at what a big impact this had on the news. And this also shows how contrived the news is, and the news agenda is incredibly biased. Now, while the news itself is not biased, because they have to make everything not biased, everything has to be impartial and fair, But that doesn't mean the news agenda is not biased, because even if the stories themselves, such as if there's a story about Labour versus Conservative, BBC and that have to make the story fair. But what is not fair is what is set in the news agenda in the first place. And the fact the Queen became the only topic on the news was completely wrong. Now in the news, it very much angers me as certain subjects that are not discussed that need discussing, especially major genocides around the world. Think about it, a genocide, loads of people being killed, and there's multiple genocides happening in the world at this moment, and only some of them are reported. For example, got a war between Russia and Ukraine, that is reported, but other issues? What about the genocide happening in China? That's been reported a little bit, but nowhere near enough considering how serious this is. An entire race of an ethnic minority of people are being killed in China, and it doesn't make the news anywhere near as much as it should for how significant that is. And there's many other genocides which I don't even know about that much, simply because they're not reported. So just think about all of those people and how they must feel. The topic of their own life and death, if it even was being covered in the first place, is no longer being covered by the news just because of the Queen. I find that completely insulting. But it's beyond just that the news was overly enthusiastic on this irrelevant news story about the Queen. What's even worse than that is everything shut down. Now let's just take a look at the TV channels when this happened, and you can see that every single one of the major channels shut down. The most prime channels all changed their programming to talking about the Queen, cancelling what programmes would have been played. So this all-day programme, so let's say I want to go on TV and watch, I don't know, some programme I like. I wouldn't get to see it because all of the major channels shut down to show Queen rubbish. But what's even worse than that is a lot of the minor channels also shut down, such as BBC 3 and BBC 4 also shut down. But these channels didn't show stuff about the Queen. They just went off. So why were those ones shut down? So if the programming wasn't even replaced with stuff about the Queen, the channel was completely turned off. How insulting to all of the people who actually wanted to watch their normal everyday programmes. Let's take a look. It's a day when the entire TV shut down. On Channel 0, which is normally Virgin Media adverts and trailers for what's on Virgin Media, that has stopped. Then on to BBC 1, it's meant to be Ambulance, but that's now just showing stuff about the Queen, just like pretty much every channel is. BBC 2 is showing the exact same thing as BBC 1, all about the Queen. Go on to ITV, meant to be Police Camera Murder, but if you wanted to watch that, you can't. It's showing various things about the Queen, people talking about it and all stuff like outside Buckingham Palace. Channel 4, meant to be Katie Price, but it's actually showing about the Queen. That's some interview there about what's going on with the Queen. It's ridiculous, it's not showing what it's supposed to be showing. The next channel, Channel 5 HD, and that is also showing stuff about the Queen. Yep, more Queen stuff, so you can't watch anything. Then you've got E4 Made at First Sight. That one I think is actually running, surprisingly. If you take a look at BBC's extra channels, they're not running. For example, BBC 3. Programmes are suspended for a major news story. Hardly very major. I can think of lots of things I'd count as major, and this is not one of them. This means if you actually had something to watch on BBC 3, not only is your show cancelled, but it's been replaced with absolutely nothing. I find it insulting enough if you had something to watch and it's been replaced with the Queen stuff, it's bad enough. But for what you want to watch be cancelled and have absolutely nothing in its place, that is even more insulting. If we go on to BBC 4, same thing, Mercury Prize. If you wanted to watch Mercury Prize, it's been replaced with nothing. Programmes on BBC 4 have been suspended. Please switch to BBC 1 for a major news report. Hardly very major. So if you wanted to watch a Mercury Prize, you can't watch it, and instead you just get a blank screen. It's not even like it's put anything in its place. Then if we continue on, Sky Showcase. Oh, can't watch Sky Showcase either. That's also about the Queen. We've got Sky Witness. Is that going to be running? Oh, that one's actually running, okay. Police Camera Murder, then it's just showing the HD versions of the channels, and you've got +1 versions of the channels. ITV2. Okay, that one's actually running. So ITV are showing on their extra channels what they're supposed to be showing, unlike BBC, which is not showing anything on their extra channels. That gives you an idea of how much the TV has shut down. The fact that every one of the major channels shut down, as well as being complete overreaction and ridiculous over an absolute irrelevant non-news story about the Queen, as well as that being wrong, what's even more wrong is there's major things in the world. Surely if you're going to shut down the whole of TV, it have to be for something very big. How on earth can this old lady dying of natural causes possibly be something worthy of shutting down the whole of the TV? Also, this complete TV shutdown is a protocol of the whole TV having to stop for a major event. This is pretty much your nuclear bomb protocol. If a nuclear bomb was coming towards the UK, all TV has to stop. Emergency messages have to be displayed. Not just TV has to stop, but it has to be messages all over everything on the internet, plus all of the advertising boards across the country all stop and also show warnings that bombs coming. Why would you activate such a serious information alert protocol if there's nothing serious happening? And it's a dangerous part of this, which means that people are going to be used to seeing this protocol. And if people are used to seeing it, they take it less seriously. For example, if everyone saw all of the information boards suddenly go blank across the country with a message saying, "See the news," or I see at BBC Three suddenly went blank and there's a sign on it saying, "See the news," people are now going to think, oh, it's just another person in the royal family that's died. Well, in fact, that could mean a nuclear bomb's coming. Okay, it's incredibly unlikely. Or it could be some other major weather event. I don't know, tsunami coming or something. People will take this protocol less seriously now because the protocol was used for an unnecessary reason. So then, let's now take a look around what happened in the streets of England while this whole load of nonsense was happening. As we can see here, all the advertisement boards went blank and showed pictures of the Queen. Now, I'm not exactly going to be feeling sorry for capitalists that much, but to be honest, I do feel sorry for them in a way. All the advertising revenue just gone for a non-event. Why do you shut the country down for this? The country stood still for something irrelevant. There's actually major things that happened in the news that a country should have stood still for. For example, when Boris Johnson attempted to make a coup, he shut down Parliament, he suspended Parliament, prorogued it for a political agenda to try and stop debate about Brexit. That was major. That was a Prime Minister in this country trying to avoid democracy, staging a coup, and that wasn't talked about much. And already the right-wing media has forgotten about it because it's not in their interest to remember bad things that Conservatives did, since they all support Conservatives, since they're all run by media moguls. But having a coup staged and the whole country's democracy being jeopardised by Boris trying to prorogue Parliament, that is something so fundamentally important. That should have made the whole country stand still in shock. Not some stupid Queen news story. Then, beyond all of this, is how social media went crazy. It got into a point where everyone felt they had to put up on their Instagram stories and Facebook and all other stuff. They had to write about how they were sorry that the Queen had died. And it almost felt like they were forced to. Like anyone that didn't write her condolences for a Queen dying would be looked down upon like a very bad person. Now that's scary. If you feel like you are forced to have to write something because otherwise people look bad on you, how's that any different to when the North Korea leader died? And we've all seen the scenes on the news of these people crying at the escalator, and they're all scared to stop crying because whoever's the first one that stops crying was scared they'd be disrespecting the former leader of North Korea. So they all wanted to be the last one to stop crying, meaning they were all forced to stand there for days pretending to cry at this escalator. When that was on the news, we all laughed at that and thought how weird North Korea was. Yet not that dissimilar is happening in England. Then there's also the classic example. I don't really want to talk about Nazi Germany and stuff because as an example it's overused. But it's starting to feel a bit similar. When people in the streets used to say like they supported Hitler and everyone else had to agree with them. And if anyone dared to disagree, people would get really aggressive. And that's something that happened when Hitler was rising in Germany. Although it's not to that scale, and I'm not going to try and claim it's to that scale, the fact that people feel like they have to feel sorry for a queen, if they don't, they're going to be criticised. That's got some similarities. So with that said, let's do a bit of an experiment. So I went around London and I was saying to the random people, abolish your monarchy. Now that isn't in itself disrespectful because I'm not saying anything nasty about the Queen as a person or anything like that. I'm simply saying a political view. I think monarchy should be abolished. But I got some really odd reactions. I didn't actually get the best reactions on film, but some people got incredibly offended. And often people would be talking, I'd say abolish the monarchy, and everyone that heard me would go silent and just look at me shocked with their mouths wide open. Bloody hell, it's just a political opinion. It's not even that much of a controversial political opinion. At least it wouldn't have been controversial like a couple of weeks earlier. Is this the Abolish the Monarchy party? Down there, Abolish the Monarchy party? No, I don't know.
Monarchy's been abolished.
Abolish your monarchy? Another thing that got incredibly strange was the incredibly long queue to see a coffin. I don't know why anyone wants to see a coffin, it's not exactly particularly exciting. And at its most, the queue got to 22 hours. So people are waiting in a queue for 22 hours to see a coffin, and they only got to see his coffin for a couple of minutes. That's literally the queue, look how long that is. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Does anyone here think the monarchy should be abolished? No one. Oh well. And the amount of medical emergencies that occurred in that queue was scary. Right when the Conservative government has taken away funding and has stretched the ambulance service, so the ambulance service is struggling enough to cope with their situation, then they're having to deal with all these medical emergencies caused by people standing for very long periods of time, which is not healthy for people to stand for that long, and several people collapsed in the queue. And what made this whole situation worse is that when the Queen's funeral happened, the country shut down. Let's take a look at all of the things that closed during this period. Now, the scariest one is that food banks closed. Food banks are there for the poorest people in society, people that can't afford food. That's like the most critical, necessary thing that someone needs is food. And food banks are there because the Conservative government has failed people, which has made people resort to having to use food banks. People depend on these food banks, and these shut because of the Queen? So ridiculous. And also really scary. Also, a lot of the stuff that closed for the Queen was stuff, mainly businesses at people without money needed, such as McDonald's. This closed down. Now, people with lots of money would be able to prepare for everything shutting down, plus most of their things didn't shut down to the same extent. It was people without much money and the services and business they depended on, like ordinary supermarkets. Those were the things that shut down. So the things that were there for people without much money shut down. That just feels very not moral to me. Plus, not only all of this, then there was the NHS. People had their operations cancelled because of the Queen. People had their cancer treatment cancelled because of the Queen. I don't even know how I can describe that and how bad that is. I just don't get it. I do not understand how the country has these priorities set with the Queen being... I don't understand this. So to summarise, the whole thing was utterly ridiculous. The whole country came to a standstill for almost 2 weeks when nothing could really be discussed other than the Queen. Major news issues were not discussed because the news went on and on and on about Queen, plus the fact the news had nothing to say. It just go round in circles. There was nothing interesting to be heard on it. And that went on for almost 2 weeks. How can this country be like this? How can this irrelevant Queen person take up so much news time for nothing? This is scary. This is not just a joke. It's not just some funny little weird thing, because it actually affected people, because it was taking away actual people's services they needed and taking away actual news time where important stuff should be discussed just for that. And also, I bet the government passed some non-favourable laws during that time while the news was distracted. They always do. Every time it's a big news story where the news isn't focusing on the government, is the government's perfect time to pass an unpopular law. Ultimately, to sum up the entire thing, there's just 3 words that sum it up perfectly. Abolish the monarchy.